From NPR News in Washington, I'm Dan Ronan. State lawmakers in Texas begin a special session today that is set to produce a controversial new map of the state's congressional voting districts. As NPR's Hansilo Wong reports, Texas is one of multiple states that may end up holding next year's midterm election with new voting maps.
Redistricting is usually a once-a-decade process after a census. But 4 years after the release of the results from the 2020 headcount, Republican Governor Greg Abbott has called a special session of the Republican-controlled legislature to redraw Texas's congressional map with the support of President Trump.
Just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
There are a handful of other states in the South, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, plus Utah and Wisconsin that may end up with new congressional maps soon through lawsuits. And Ohio has to redistrict for its seats in the U.S. House because of a state law. With a narrowly divided Congress, it all means that any changes with voting districts could make a big difference in whether Republicans keep control of the House or lose it to the Democrats. Hansilo Wong, NPR News.
President Trump is telling the NFL's Washington Commanders he may hold up the team's multi-billion-dollar planned new stadium unless the team changes its name. On Sunday on social media, he insisted the team return to its previous name if they want the deal to go forward. Lawyers for Harvard University and the Trump administration will face off in federal court today over federal funding research grants. As NPR's Alyssa Lodnerney reports, the nation's oldest university is arguing that the government's freeze of more than $2 billion in grants and contracts is illegal and should be reversed.
In court documents, Harvard's attorneys argue the federal funding cuts imposed by the Trump administration threaten vital research in medicine, science, and technology. The school's lawsuit aims to block the Trump administration from withholding federal funding, quote, as leverage to gain control of academic decision-making at Harvard, unquote. The government said it froze the funding because Harvard violated federal civil rights law by failing to address anti-Semitism on campus, and that federal money is a privilege, not an entitlement. Alyssa Lodnerney, NPR News.
Arizona officials say a wildfire at the Grand Canyon's North Rim continues to burn, and the state's Governor Katie Hobbs is calling for an investigation as to how the blaze was handled as she meets with federal officials next week. The fire began July 4th as a result of a lightning strike, but the National Park Service allowed it to burn as part of a confine and contain strategy that the Park Service has used for decades to clear dense vegetation. The governor spoke with reporters after touring the fire by helicopter.
It's so devastating as a lifelong Arizonan. It just is a reminder of the shared stewardship we have of this land and this iconic treasure of the Grand Canyon.
The fire has charred more than 18 square miles of land as of Saturday. At least 16 people are dead in Bangladesh this after an Air Force training aircraft crashed into a school in the capital of Dhaka. A doctor says at least 50 other people have been injured. The government pledges an investigation. At least 2 people are dead. Several more are wounded following an overnight Russian air assault on Ukraine. The strikes come as both Russia and Ukraine have intensified drone attacks amid a new push by the White House to force a peace deal. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maynes reports.
Russia launched more than 450 drones and rockets overnight Sunday, say Ukrainian officials, the majority of which air defenses managed to intercept. Yet in the capital Kyiv, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said rescue teams were working several areas where explosions occurred, including a residential building and a metro station. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry accused Ukraine of launching mass attacks on Moscow and other Russian regions, with drones striking 2 residential buildings outside the capital and snarling regional air traffic for thousands. The continued fighting comes as President Trump has imposed a 50-day deadline on Russia to agree to a ceasefire proposal embraced by Ukraine or face additional U.S. sanctions. Charles Maynes, NPR News, Moscow.
President Trump has said he will help Afghan refugees stuck in the UAE. Amkar Kandikar reports that Trump was reacting to a report claiming the UAE officials were going to hand over the Afghan refugees in Abu Dhabi to the Taliban.
In 2021, the UAE had agreed to temporarily house several thousand Afghans evacuated from Kabul after the Taliban's takeover of the country. Most of them were eventually taken in by the US, Canada, and other countries. On Saturday, the website Just the News published a report saying the UAE was planning to deport some of the 30 Afghan refugees left to Kabul. Trump responded to the news on Truth Social, saying, quote, "I will try to save them, starting right now." Reuters reports that it might just be too late, for the Emirati government had begun returning Afghans to Taliban last week itself. Omkar Khandekar, NPR News, Mumbai.
Your morning coffee could cost you more. President Trump wants to place heavy tariffs on all goods coming from Brazil. That's the world's largest coffee producer. Economists and coffee roasters tell NPR's Jacqueline Diaz consumers will ultimately pay more.
Earlier this month, the Trump administration announced a 50% tariff on all goods from Brazil. This is on top of a 10% tariff already in place. Brazil is the source of about a third of U.S. coffee imports. Other coffee-producing countries, including Vietnam, Colombia, and Ethiopia, are also facing possible tariffs from the Trump administration. The move has the U.S. coffee industry, from importers to roasters to coffee shops, rattled.
A 50% tariff will kill that market.
That's Monica DeBole, a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. The tariffs for Brazil and other nations aren't set to begin until August 1st. For now, the U.S. coffee industry and coffee lovers hope tariffs won't come to pass. Jacqueline Diaz, NPR News.
This is NPR.